Hello everyone, welcome back to Jazz Arranging class. Today I'd like to finish up the series on the analyzation of the Alan Balog chart, It's Alright With Me, for 17-piece big band. In the first video we took a wide-angle view of the chart, basically an outline of the form, rhythm, and harmony. In the second video we looked at more specific arranging techniques that were used throughout the entire chart. In this video I want to hone in on the specific voicings, span, weight, and density in each of the sections and how the arranger handles each instrument in the rhythm section, as well as specific techniques used in the saxes, trumpets, and trombones. You'll find the previous video links in the description below. So let's get started. Before diving into the horn section, let's analyze how this arranger approaches each part of the rhythm section, starting with the guitar. Throughout this chart, the guitar often doubles the lead line in the saxophones. This happens in the introduction as well as when the saxophones introduce counter lines. Beyond doubling lines in the saxes, the guitar also mirrors the funk-style riff played by the bass. Additionally, the guitar serves as a harmonic instrument. In measure 19, you'll notice the guitar part includes chord changes laid out in rhythmic patterns, accentuating and complementing the piano part. Later, at the bridge in measure 43, the guitar supports the trombone section. During the solo, the guitar and piano work together as a team, laying down harmony and rhythm. It's important to note that some guitar players don't read notes, they only read chord changes. This can make doubling the saxophone lines a challenge for certain players. When arranging, ensure the guitarist in your band can read notes, not just chord symbols. Also, in this chart, you'll see full dominant seventh chords with upper extensions written out for the guitar, which is often not the case for bass. In this chart, no chord changes are written out for the bass or piano players, only written notes. Personally, I prefer to include chord changes for both parts in case any players have difficulty reading the written notes. Even excellent jazz players sometimes struggle with reading music, so having chord changes as a reference can be incredibly helpful. The piano's role here is both harmonic and rhythmic, often mirroring what's happening in the brass and the big band. The left hand sometimes mirrors the bass part, while the right hand provides harmony, especially in the beginning. In measure 35, the piano doubles the notes in the saxophone section, creating 5-part harmony. At the bridge, the left hand mirrors the bass and bari sax with a pedal E flat, while the right hand mirrors the trombones exactly, scored in diminished 7th chords. Throughout the chart, the piano serves a consistent role, reinforcing harmony and rhythm, particularly during full ensemble sections where it supports and doubles the trombone and trumpet parts. Interesting to note that in this arrangement, the piano plays no counter lines. The doubling of the counter line is not in the saxes, but it's scored for the guitar instead. The only thing I do differently in this arrangement is to add chord symbols above the written notes in both the bass and piano. Overall, however, the arranger has handled the piano part in typical fashion for a published chart. Now let's take a look at how the arranger approaches the bass part. As expected, the bass primarily lays down the roots of the chords while also mirroring the rhythm of the band. Occasionally, you'll notice chromatic movements such as in measure 3, but for the most part, the bass focuses on establishing the groove and reinforcing the root notes of the chords. As I mentioned earlier, the left hand of the piano doubles the funk rhythm established by the bass. As was mentioned before as well, you'll see there are no chord symbols above the bass part. Again, I prefer to include chord symbols for all rhythm section players, except for the drummer, of course. Bass players generally read notes more fluently than piano players, but chord symbols are still very helpful. At the bridge, the bass plays a pedal tone doubled by the piano left hand and bari sax. The arranger maintains its consistency throughout the chart when it comes to the bass part. Like the piano part, the bass part here is straightforward and clear. I would include chord symbols, but unlike the guitar part, the bass cymbal chords are watered down some, leaving out any upper extensions as you would see in a guitar or piano part. One of the more challenging parts to get right, at least for me, has been the drum part. It's helpful to study charts and observe how different arrangers write drum parts, as their approaches can vary. The key to a great drum part is providing an outline for the drummer, focusing on the essential hits and rhythms happening in the band without overwhelming them with too much information. In this chart, the arranger uses the drums to begin the piece and features a drum solo at the end. In the introduction, the drum part primarily provides cues for the rhythms happening in the band, especially in the brass section. It's important to remember that the drummer's role is to accentuate what's happening in the band rather than play independently. Where time and groove are established, the arranger writes out the first 1 or 2 measures, and in this case, uses 2-bar repeats instead of no notating every measure the same. This approach keeps the drum part clean and easy to read. For example, at the bridge, the drum part changes slightly but still employs 2-bar repeats as seen in measure 45. In measure 49, the drummer is given cues for rhythms within the band. An essential element of writing good drum parts is indicating when and where fills should occur. In measure 36, there's a 2-bar fill followed by rhythmic cues for the band. Similarly, in measure 58, another fill transitions the section smoothly. Good drum parts act as a glue, connecting sections logically and maintaining the flow of the arrangement. The most important principle in writing drum parts is to keep them simple. Drummers are experienced musicians who often know instinctively what to play. Even if you write out exactly what you want, they may use it as a guide, relying on their skills to enhance the part and make it better. I've routinely asked drummers about my drum parts, and they give me good tips on how they can be better. When arranging, always consider the drummer's skill and experience. For example, in measures 131 through 133, the drummer is given a 3-bar solo. If your drummer struggles to keep time, this could be problematic. The longer the solo, the more skilled the drummer needs to be. Now let's take a look at how this arranger approaches the saxophone section. As mentioned in the second video of this series, saxophones are often used in unison for both melodies and counterlines. However, when they are voiced in 5-part harmony, the baritone saxophone typically avoids playing the root. For example, in measure 9, the saxophones are voiced in 5-part harmony to capture all the important tones of the dominant altered chord. Similarly, in measure 35, they are voiced in 5-part harmony with unison pickups leading into the harmony, as seen in measures 36 and 38. However, this 5-part harmony doesn't last long, as the arranger often returns to unison voicing. During the bridge, the baritone sax doubles the bass and the left hand of the piano, separating it from the other 4 saxophones. It does not join the rest of the section in counterlines, which is a common approach. The bari sax often reinforces the bass player by doubling roots, particularly in pedal point situations. While it can join the saxophone section in counterlines, it is generally an octave below the lead alto and sometimes 2 octaves. In this chart, that is not the case. The bari sax never joins in with the other saxophone players or the counterlines. In the solo section at measure 99, the baritone sax does not join the tenors in the counterline. Due to its weight and timbre, the bari sax is less suited for lighter textures. However, it excels at laying down the roots of the ensemble. Because the saxophone section consists of 5 distinct voices, you have the flexibility to write out 5-part harmony within the section, even if the bari sax is placed on the root. This flexibility is one of the defining features of arranging for saxophones. Now let's move on to the trumpet section. As you saw in the previous video, the trumpets are used for both melody, in unison, and harmony. When not in unison, they are primarily voiced in triads, with the top voice doubled at the octave in the 4th trumpet. For example, in the introduction and other parts of the chart, the trumpets are voiced in an E-flat triad over an A-flat major 9 chord. This is a very common arranging technique when voicing for the trumpet section. In the D-flat 13 sharp 11 chord, the E-flat triad includes the sharp 11, the 9th, and the 13th, with the sharp 11 doubled at the octave. This voicing creates a resonant chord that stands out above the important information presented by the trombones. Similarly, in bar 4, over the G-flat major 13 sharp 11 chord, an A-flat concert triad is voiced above the trombones. This includes the 9th, the 13th, and the sharp 11, just as in measures 2 and 3. Voicing the upper extensions in the 1st trumpet, doubled by the 4th trumpet an octave below, gives the chord its distinct quality and ensures it is clearly heard. The arranger maintains consistency throughout the chart, always voicing a triad within an octave and assuring the 4th trumpet never exceeds an octave below the 1st trumpet. At the bridge, the trumpets play a unison line that spans a comfortable range with all 4 instruments doubling the melody. This adds weight and presence to the section. In measure 107, the trumpets are voiced in 3 parts, with the 3rd and 4th trumpets doubling each other. Here, the alto sax 2 doubles the 1st trumpet to add harmony and rhythm. The arranger is not hesitant to double notes within the trumpet section, as seen at the end of measure 109. In this case, E flat and F sharp represent the sharp 9 and sharp 11 of a C7 chord. These upper extensions are voiced relatively low, which is likely why the arranger chose to double them, adding more weight and emphasis to these crucial tones. For the final section, let's go over the trombones. This arranger utilizes the trombones both as a unison melody section and for providing rhythmic and harmonic support in various parts of the chart, similar to the trumpets. In the introduction, the trombones are voiced in a relatively closed position, covering all the essential notes of the chord. For instance, in measure 2, the A-flat major 9 chord includes the 7th, 9th, 3rd, and 5th. While the 5th is typically the first note to be substituted, the arranger chose to include it here, likely to keep the trombone range from going too high. On the D-flat 13 dominant chord, the voicing includes the 3rd, 13th, 7th, and 9th. This is a well-constructed chord that provides all the necessary harmonic information in a comfortable register for the trombones. Notably, the 3rd and 7th critical notes for defining the dominant chord are present, while the 13th replaces the 5th and the 9th substitutes for the root in the first trombone. The arranger does an excellent job voicing the trombones to create a full, rich sound while ensuring all the essential harmonic information is conveyed, particularly in those dominant altered chords. The trombones, much like the left hand of a piano player, provide harmony and rhythm to support the entire arrangement. At the start of the chart, the trombones play in unison in a relatively low register. Raising this an octave would exclude the bass trombone from participating, as it would exceed its practical range. Even though this register appears mid-range, it is actually somewhat low for the trombone section. In measure 30, the trombones break into melodic couplings to support the saxophone section, which is playing in unison. At measure 43, the trombones are voiced in closed position diminished 7th chords, mirrored by the piano's right hand. In measure 49, the baritone saxophone joins the trombones in a rhythmic turnaround, leading to the next section. During the solos, 3 trombones are used in a unison line paired with the tenor saxophones, a combination that blends very well. The trombone range throughout the chart stays below a G above the staff, which is really ideal for playability across bands of varying skill levels. While trombones can play up to a high B flat or C, keeping the parts below a high B flat ensures greater accessibility for more ensembles. As mentioned in the second video of this series, when the bass trombone plays the root of the chord, the baritone sax does not. If any instrument should carry the weight of a root note, it's probably the bass trombone. It's always worth noting that while the saxophones can produce 5-part harmony, the trombone section is limited to 4-part harmony. For example, in measure 134, the trombones are voiced on the root, 7th, 3rd, and augmented 5th of the chord. The trumpets complement this with a triad, while the saxophones add even more harmonic information, including the 7th, 3rd, 9th, root, and sharp 9. So that wraps up the series of reverse engineering a big band chart. I'll be doing more of this in the future on other charts, so stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this dissection of Alan Balog's terrific arrangement on It's Alright With Me. If you've enjoyed this video and others, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, keep writing.